Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. Let's talk about conflict. Yes, I am the person who still likes to talk about conflict. My name is Lynn Nash, and I am your host. And the other things I do besides podcast, I am a full-time attorney mediator in Dallas, and I teach alternative dispute resolution. And I love talking about ways to help yourself when you find yourself in conflict. So let's get back to what we've been talking about. This is episode 5 of 5 about this fabulous book that I believe in beyond measure called Getting Past No. It's written by William Ury. And this is our final installment. And so, I've really been deep diving into this material and thinking about it. I hope you've listened to this and I hope you found something useful. There are nuggets of brilliance in here, and his name is Ury, not Nashy. Lynn Nash has some thoughts, but he really put this together, and I won't take credit for it. So let's dive in here. In Getting Past No, we're going to go back through this. Ury's identified 5 different strategies to assist us when we're having that first no. How do we get to that joint yes? And these are, number 1, don't react. Go to the balcony. Yeah, not a literal balcony, but go to the balcony, step away, take a breath, give yourself time. Don't react. Number 2, don't argue. Easier said than done. Don't argue, but step to their side. Find a way to hear where they're coming from. Work on it. Don't reject. Reframe. Think about that frames theory. Think about how you can try and see things through their eyes. Try and work on it together. Try to build a continued sense of fairness among yourselves. Number 4, don't push. Ooh, that's hard. For my salespeople listening, don't push. That's hard. Build them a golden bridge. Give them a way to come and say yes. Think about all those human elements that may be that final thing. How do you save face? How do you do those things? Don't push. Build them a golden bridge. Give them a way to come to you and where the deal is. And even if they are going to have to give up a few things, they're going to get what they need. And that's what's important. So here we are. Number 5, don't escalate. Use power to educate. Okay, so power is a little bit of that might be, this is where you have to step it up a notch. Use the power, but don't escalate. So I think anyone who's ever been in a very contentious situation where there's I'm right, you're wrong mentalities, and if you were just smarter, you would see I'm right and you would just do what I want you to do. We've all been there. Okay. So you get caught in that power game and you stop listening and you stop reframing and you're just pushing your position. And so instead of, and I love how Ury writes this, he says, so instead of giving them this golden bridge, this calm, come on over here, we're going to make this deal together, we're both going to get, we are creating it. Instead of building that and the golden bridge, you're forcing them down a gangplank, right? So we have this lovely image of the golden bridge that we can go from one side to the other together, and it will all be beautiful and lovely. And then we have this concept of like the pirates walking the plank, right? You're off the gangplank. You don't really want to be that person pushing somebody down the gangplank. It's not going to help. So the BS, we all know what that means, tends to build this power paradox that plays out that way. The harder you make it for them to say no, the harder you make it for them to say yes. Now I want you to think about that. The more you push that, you're the pirate with the sword and you're pushing them down the blank, and they're either going to have to jump in the water that you're forcing them to, or come at the sword. And you're forcing this. The harder you make it for them to say no, the harder you make it for them to say yes. And this is a paradox that happens when you get all this power, big egos involved in the push, push, push. So how do you overcome the power paradox? Okay. This is one of my favorite words, education. Education. This is your opportunity. Instead of pushing them down that gangplank back to the golden bridge, you want to always try and figure out how to do that together. Educate the other side that their BATNA, which, just for those of you who haven't read Getting to Yes, BATNA means the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Okay, so if we don't do this deal, what's my best alternative? Okay, you have that even if you don't realize you have it. I promise. This is how our brains work. So if you're in this paradox and this power push pull thing, you're going to educate and say, hey, what is your walk away? What is the best thing if we don't do this for you? That's still not as good as this deal. You want to come back to say, I understand it's scary. I understand it's difficult. I understand any of those things, but this deal beats anything else you're going to have to deal with. Give them the way to see how their walk away best alternative to what you're negotiating is still not better than what you have on the table. You want to focus their attention on avoiding negative consequences to no agreement. You don't want them to think about no agreement. But you can't do it by saying, I see this for you and I know this is in your best interest and I this and I that. No, it has to be them. You got to seek to shape the choice into a decision that is their interest and yours. Back to the we built the bridge together. We walked over it hand in hand. Ask those reality testing questions. You got to check in. Absolutely none of us know what's going on with somebody else. I mean, we try, we think we do. We might to some degree, but nobody really knows what's going on in somebody else's head. So ask that question. And this seems so trite and so simple, but we fail to do it. Which is why William Ury is so brilliant, because he wrote it all down. Ask, what do you think will happen if we can't find an agreement? If we don't solve this together, what's going to happen? Ask, what do you think my best path is if we can't find an agreement? Put yourself in my shoes, right? What do you think you will do if this doesn't work out? It's not threatening. It's not a challenge. It is a way to say, hey, this is a good thing. This is good for all of us, and this is a good thing. We want to reach an agreement. We want to demonstrate everybody is going to live in that agreement, and it's better than what the alternatives are. It's not a threat. You don't want to threaten them. A threat would be an announcement of an intent to inflict pain, injury, or punishment. It's a warning. And a warning is what will happen. A threat is, what are you going to do to them? Do you hear the difference? It seems subtle, but the way it lands on ears when you're in a combative situation, it's very different. Okay? So what will happen is going to happen to everybody. We're all on this ship together. We're trying not to push each other down the gangplank. We are all on this ship together, and we're going to have to figure out the best solution for how to dock this boat, right? So we can all walk onto land over our golden bridge together. Demonstrate your BATNA. You can tell them, you can show what will happen if you go to your best alternative. And if you have to go there, you might bring them back to the table, because that actually could happen. You're looking at yours, they're looking at theirs. It could happen, but is it better than the deal? No. And that's what you have to go back to. Loading your own personal, this is where I'm going to pull out and go, can sometimes diffuse a reaction. But man, you got to do it without provoking the other side. In fact, Ury says that it's best not to use your best alternative to a negotiated agreement at all, if possible. And I agree 100%. It's very hard to do that and it not sound like a threat. Are you threatening me? Or it's an easy response of, you're threatening me and I don't appreciate that. And so it's a two-way street getting in this power play thing. You have to be very, very careful. to neutralize a power play, you want to consider all the things that might happen. It might be important to think about if your counterpart in this conversation is going to go over your head to your boss. What's going to happen then? A friend of mine this week was just telling me about having this conflict with some people in education and higher education sort of things, professional education sort of things, saying, well, I want it done this way. And there's a whole writing style of why it's done the way she's doing it. And they go above her head to the person who developed the writing style, who says, no, that's exactly how it's going to be. So, but my friend wasn't concerned about it because she already knew what was going to happen if it went up the line. She didn't have to have that discussion with the boss because she already knew what was going to happen. But it's because she knew the information. If you don't know that what your boss is going to do, you need to have that conversation. You need to know what's going to happen if somebody goes above your head. You need to ensure what the response is going to be. You got to have that consistency so that if they say, well, I'm just going to talk to your boss, you can say, I think that's a great idea. Please feel free to contact them because I have discussed this with them and I'm really confident that she's going to tell you the same thing I have. That's what my friend had. She already had that backup in place. She knew what was going to happen. She was good, fine. And it also neutralizes that feeling of being attacked, that power play of I'm going to go up the line and get what I want. Power plays work running up the line when people don't say the same thing. In your organizations, be sure that you are trying to continually say the same thing and keep the message consistent. Bravo to my friend, because they are saying the same thing over and over again. That makes their interactions a lot easier with their constituency. And that's all internal politics. That's not even external. Ury says, tap the third force. Bring in other people. Okay. What do you mean by the third force? What's a third party? What would a third party add to your conversation? Maybe a third party is an effective way to deter attacks. Hey, guess what? I know this is crazy, but as a mediator, you know what we say? I'm a third party neutral. Third party. I am the third force. I come in to try and help people hear each other and see all the angle on where they're coming from and where their opponent's coming from. That's what I do for a living. I thoroughly believe in this, but you don't even have to utilize necessarily a mediator. Maybe it is your boss. Come in and say, here's where things are, here's where things are going, and this is what I think. Do you agree with this? Maybe, maybe not. Build that coalition. Find some allies. Your counterpart's going to have theirs. And don't forget about that neutral, right? It's important to know what that third party out there might do. It doesn't mean you have to do what they do. And we talk about mediators say that all the time. It's like, I can tell you what I think, but that doesn't matter. It matters what you want to do. And helping people really hear themselves to figure out what they actually want. Sometimes that's the harder part. But building that team bench, right? Think about little kid soccer. There are all these kids sitting on the bench. They're not on the field right now, but they're ready to go and they're on your side. You want that. You need those allies. Your opponent more than likely is going to try and build that as well. Okay. It is not a negative. It's not a bad thing. It's not a power play. It is making sure that your plan is consistent and is upheld by everybody involved. It's not a bad thing. That use the third force. Okay. So this is so important. If you hear nothing else out of this whole piece, contrary to popular belief, let me say that part again. Contrary to popular belief, Ury reminds us, the author of Getting to Know, that just when the other side appears to be coming around, you should back off and let them make their own decision. Okay, let me say that again. Just when the other side appears to be coming around, you should back off and let them make their own decision. Why? Why? Okay, you got to be really aware me, I am not making the decision or either or in any situation for the other side. Do you know who I get to do that for? My children. Sometimes my spouse, but not even him all the time. That's not I mean, when you're in a negotiation, you need the other person to absolutely make their own decision and feel that it was their own decision. And don't be smug and be like, yeah, I knew you'd get there. Don't do those things. It will only hurt you. Okay, we're back. This is education. This is how we educate ourselves. This is how we educate ourselves to how the human beings need to get back to a golden bridge and off the gangplank. Finally, after using the power of education, which is what we've been talking about today, keep your deal implementation in mind. Okay. Think about this. If you've gone through with this whole process and you work really hard to hear each other and you start to understand each other better, and now it's time to make the deal, whatever this looks like. Think about it this way. I talk a lot about sales and contracts and negotiation and mediation, that sort of thing, but it can be as simple as this. The fifth time somebody left dishes in the sink and it made mom, I'll just do it. It made mom nuts and blow up because it's just not important to anybody else. Instead of having a constant fight about who has to do the dishes, we're going to do this implementation about the deal and say, yep, we're now building a chores list and we're going to alternate by weeks. This week, I'm going to do all the dishes this week. And next week, all the dishes are somebody else's fault. But here are the conditions around the deal. We're going to make sure the details are there. Dishes means nothing gets left in the sink. Dishes means the dishwasher runs and gets emptied on the same day. You have to be specific, right? We've talked about that in other episodes, but if you don't lay down the real conditions of your deal with the implementation in mind of what it actually looks like on the other side, then you're going to struggle. I heard, and I haven't read this, so I'm not sure which book it came out of, but Brene Brown talks about paint finish. That's an expression people pick up and use. So you're painting, but what do you want it? What's the finish look like? You just started painting it, but what does it look like finished? That is thinking about the deal's implementation. What's this thing got to look like on the other side and when it's completely done? So think it through the details because they only help you. They help you not have another dust up or another conflict or another negotiation that has to be revamped over the same issues. Build a resolution procedure that gives both of you a way to work through the situation should it arise again. In contracts, you see this, that people have to either go to an arbitration or mediation, or I know most mediators, when we write a mediated settlement agreement, an MSA, it typically says if there's any confusion in this document or what the term should represent or mean, you will come back to the mediator for a resolution on that instead of fighting about it amongst yourselves. Build in a resolution process. I am a conflict resolution professional, and I cannot tell you enough how important that is, i.e., back to the dishes, as simple as dishes. Hey, if it's your week and you're really busy with work or school or whatever it is, you get a 24-hour grace, i.e., there's crap in the sink the night of, but you got to get up in the morning and do them. You can't walk out and leave it for 48 hours. That's not acceptable because that's not the implementation plan. But you have a little bit of a resolution procedure built in right there by saying, okay, I see it. It's going to make me crazy. I'm not going to go do it. But you have already committed to me that you understand it's a 24-hour window. And we get past the 24-hour window, you're going to know you're making me crazy. Here we go. Aim, this is so important, aim for that mutual satisfaction. Ury writes it that way like a great academic. Aim for mutual satisfaction. I'm going to say it this way. You want to win-win. It is not about victory. It is about, did you get enough that the deal was worth doing? It is not about all. It is not about I win, you lose. It is about thinking through how to do this conversation again or this negotiation again should it arise. You don't want to be constantly trying to find a new way in. You want to build that relationship and maintain that relationship and find as much mutual satisfaction, that win-win, when the deal is done rather than a victory. Okay. The win-win for me on dishes, and I hate to harp dishes like I am, but it does make me absolutely bonkers because things get broken in the sink. Because people throw something in there and there's dishes in there, some blah, blah, blah. Okay. For me, win-win is I know it is not all my problem, but I also know that people are respecting my personal concerns with dishes being left in the sink. Okay, that feeds me a little bit, my humanity, and we are not keeping gunky stuff floating around waiting for somebody to float back in, which by the way is always mom. So aim for that win-win. It's not about a victory. It is about trying to accomplish something together. Get over that golden bridge. Don't put somebody on a gangplank. That concludes our Getting Past No series. Don't get caught up in the power plays. It's never a great idea. Remember, you don't escalate, you educate. Think about what your alternatives are. Think about what theirs are. Think about how to bring somebody in. What are the ways that you can build a coalition? You can build allies that'll help back your play. Or frankly, maybe sometimes they look at you and go, I don't think that's right. Then you need to reset your boundaries. Okay. All of this is important and unbelievably valued. Again, I say this contrary to popular belief. Just when they start to be coming to your side, stop talking, use the power of silence, and let them make their own decision. It will always work out better in your favor, I promise. And with that, this ends our series on Getting Past No. If you've enjoyed this series, please send us an email or you can find us on Instagram, drop us a message. Let me know if you enjoyed these tips and tricks. Let me know if something worked. I said tricks again. It is not a trick. If you've enjoyed learning these skills, let us know. If you've used this somewhere, let us know. It's really important that we're talking about the sort of things that you want to learn about. It's important to me. I'll say it that way. Thank you for joining me through this. I think William Ury is just brilliant beyond measure. If you've never read Getting to Yes, you should. If you want to pick up a copy of Getting Past No, I really encourage you to, but Getting to Yes, it's foundational. If you've never read it, some of the other materials you'll read won't make as much sense. With that, I'm going to conclude our podcast today by saying thank you. Thanks for being here and taking the walk with me over a bridge and not down a gangplank. I hope you'll join me again down the road. Take care.